Hello, my name is Dennis Winters. I'm a landscape architect. And through my studio, Tales of the Earth, here in Toronto, I design and make gardens for meditation and write about the sacred landscapes that inspire them. So, welcome to the second of my video casts. This is called Shades of Engagement. It's about Georgia O'Keeffe and the erotic landscapes of Hawaii's island of Maui. It's the second of what I call the Georgia trilogy. The first, Georgia O'Keeffe and Spirituality of the Sexually Charged Landscape. And the third, coming soon, Meditations on the Spiritual Nature of Space. All stroked by this postcard someone sent me of a waterfall that Georgia painted during her not well-known 1939 trip to Hawaii, causing me to ask. She'd not done anything like it before. She'd not done anything like it after. So what happened to her there? Like the first video cast, provocative, and not at all pornographic. Like the first, guaranteed, you'll never look at landscape the same way again. Let's hope this works. Share. Slideshow. Play from start. Oh yes, one side note. The manuscript from which this video cast is derived is in search of a publisher. Georgia O'Keeffe, passenger 27, age 51, travels first class from Los Angeles to Honolulu on the Matson Company's seafaring chateau, the SS Lurline. Her fine articulated fingers curled around the coarse dark wood railing. She rolls with the Pacific. The Hawaiian Pineapple Company, the Pre of Dole Pineapple, is covering all expenses. In exchange, she'll paint pineapples for their national pineapple promotion campaign, with the provision she'll have time to paint what she wishes. We call this the Great Pineapple Escape of 1939. The human subtropical Hawaii had not been on Georgia O'Keeffe's agenda. However, painting Hawaiian pineapples is welcome respite from the continuing saga of lurid chatter and innuendos. Critics and friends alike labeling her art loamy hungers of flesh, testaments to Freud, long, loud blasts of sex. She'd missed engaging with Elvis by 18 years. March 10th. At the precise moment, Georgia O'Keeffe meets Īao Valley. From the line on the compass 60 degrees east, from the mountain slopes 40 miles behind her, the younger volcanic Haleakala captures the sun from the clasp of clouds and gifts the shaft of light to Mauna Kahalawai. It's older by 500,000 years. Veins of iridescent key lime yellows and 20-watt greens deftly stroke steep wooded cliffs. Copper and rust etches outlines of million-year-old ridges, silently absorbed into a mantle of mauve gray cloaks the valley. Iao Valley means Valley of Supreme Clouds. Sister, never seen anything like it. She'll return 11 days later. The winding, narrow shelf of a road excavated into the mountainside through the cylinder of lush tropical forest, frankly, freaks her out. With her 11-year-old guide, she gratefully arrives at the open meadow on the alluvial terrace at Kapinawai, wide enough to pull over. She succumbs to the splendid private parts of Supreme Clouds Valley, its soaring green corrugated cliffs of volcanic proportions and deep wet canyons carved by a million cycles of rain, wind, and water shower her with 400 inches of uncontainable bliss. Here she engages in a many-splendored encounter with the peculiar V-shaped canyon across the valley that will initiate her into its kaona, layers of meaning, its 3 shades of engagement with landscape. The first shade, engagement with the physical landscape, obvious and evident to the senses. The second shade, engagement with landscape revealed through stories neither evident nor logically understood. The third shade, engagement with the extremely hidden landscape, the sexual play of lands, waters, and skies meshed with all aspects of life. Georgia O'Keeffe sets her easel on level ground, a few feet from her car, inadequately engaged with passions of the valley. First, a sketch. Pencil. 11 marks. The external physical body of landscape. This will be Iao Waterfall number 1. A descriptive assemblage of topography, geology, hydrology, soils, flora, and fauna. She paints the V-shaped canyon and its tributary crevices, bare magma outcrops and ridges extending into the valley. She paints rockfall talus covered by tenuous trees and shrubs in the middle and green patches precipitously hanging on. She paints clouds attenuating otherwise intense sunlight, tropical greens absorbing color as if holding their breath, the slit of water plunging over the reentrant lip of rock crest. She paints form rather than space. Iao Waterfall number 1. Her first shade of engagement with landscape. Days later, she nervously makes way over her nemesis of a road to the end of the road. Again, first a sketch, again an economy of line. Then she paints end of road. Like waterfall number 1, end of road is a cognitive description of the visible external landscape. Like waterfall number 1, end of road is a painting in the vocabulary of the first shade of engagement, appearing as the most realistic, It's the most restrictive, the most conditioned and predictable. It's the least real, the least Georgia O'Keeffe. Beyond the end of the road above the trees, Georgia O'Keeffe eyes an erect pinnacle. Proud, formidable. The pinnacle is called Iao Needle, a splendid specter headlining all the signs of one singular sensation thrust 1,300 feet in the air, an officially designated phallus by none other than the State Department of Land and Natural Resources. Alas, Iao Needle is an eroded remnant of a winding ridge, a chorus line of basalt. Georgia O'Keeffe fancies Iao Needle as male consort to the female canyons and waterfalls. Actually, landscape is very real to her this way. A flight's more than fancy. The play of male and female hills and valleys, female and male ebbs and swells, affairs and formations, the hermeneutics of geological porn. However, Georgia O'Keeffe doesn't dwell on this brazen protuberate. Unclad, this rock proffers no mystery, neither intrigues nor excites. Georgia O'Keeffe chooses not to paint it. Excuse me. She returns to the terrace meadow at Kepinawai. This to be Iao Waterfall number 2. Initiated into the second shade of engagement with landscape, she explores audible stories and silent tales of geology and genealogy, myths and metaphor, melody accorded to the landscape of Īao Valley, intimately and immediately familiar to those who know them. She paints the speech of landscape, more real than the first 2 paintings. She paints 1,000,000 years of sunshine and darkness, cloud cover and clearing, 1,000,000 years of global warming and global cooling. She paints magmas rising from the Pacific hotspot and the flow of lava into the ocean. 1,000,000 years of mounting layers, mass wasting and erosion. 1,000,000 years of ecological vigor, basalts fragmenting into fertility, the evolution of tundra mosses into forests of tropical paradise land, lava's reemergence and cinder recovering, redenudation. She paints it because its stories are bedded with the rock. She paints the bloody encounter that took place here in 1790, the same year Haleakala last erupted, the hand-to-hand conflict on the alluvial terrace, the noxious spirit of death congealed in the soil and on its rocks, warriors who clawed their way up the canyon's rock outcrops and precipices and fell hundreds of meters to their deaths, attempting to escape pursuit. The ground saturated with enough dead bodies to dam the flow of Iao's stream. She paints this because its stories are bedded with the rock. She paints this her second shade of engagement with landscape. Okay, here's the juicy part. Sunday, March 26th. Yet once again, Georgia O'Keeffe returns to the terrace meadow, initiated into the most conscious and conscientious third shade of engagement with landscape. Previous paintings now seem quaint, served by only familiar techniques and brushwork from the cache of tools and experience brought from the continent. Of little value here, now looks deeply into the canyon, into subtleties of spirit, space, wind, and movement known by spiritual elders intimately connected to the valley as personal and indivisible to their bodies and hearts as New Mexico is to Georgia O'Keeffe's. In turn, the canyon notes her quiet demeanor. She's not passed into transcendence. The idea anathema to her anima, a divorce from divinity, a stain on her soul, an incision into her intimacy with landscape that animates and energizes whom she is and what she does right here, right now. No, she'd fully harness the natural totality of all embracing consciousness option to her. Engage the full catastrophe, mental, physical, emotional, and spirituality of life here, there, everywhere, and nowhere itself. The landscape, just as it is her Psalm 84, of which they speak. Here and now, Georgia O'Keeffe explores her intimacy with the canyon. She paints waterfall number 3, Īao Valley, as Carl Jung's psyche in accord with the structure of the universe. And what happens in the macrocosm happens in the infinitesimal and most subjective reaches of her psyche. She paints Dogen Soto Zen's mind no other than mountains and rivers and the great earth. She paints as Nagarjuna's Prajnaparamita, the totality of relative truth in dependence upon causes and conditions, arising, abiding, and abating within as without, the symphonic rhyme of cause and effect. She paints who she is as where she is, paints as landscape might paint Georgia O'Keeffe, under her skin, deep in the heart of her, paints the geopomorphizing of Georgia O'Keeffe, geologic form and space as human form and space. Muse to landscape, she paints Neruda's I want to do with you what spring does with the cherry trees. Geopomorphized, Georgia O'Keeffe doesn't paint body parts. She paints the natural erotic engagement of complementary pairs, repose with movement, rise with fall, push with pull, flex with contract, inside with outside, concave with convex, inhale with exhale, sound with silence. Geopomorphized, Georgia O'Keeffe doesn't paint body parts. She paints the natural erotic engagement of complementary pairs. She paints form with space, landscape of light with landscape of the dark, projecting landscape with embracing landscape, landscape that supplies with landscape that receives, landscape that absorbs with landscape that releases. She paints lava plugging vent, rainbow brushing rock, winds whisking water, root penetrating crevasse, rain vaccinating soil, cricket filling quiescence. Now, disciple of the breath of space rather than the weight of form, cloud rather than cliff, mist rather than outcrop, where otherwise she'd think they were just plain getting in the way. She paints clouds riding wind, creeping over ridges, sliding into folds, penetrating crevasse, the magnetic vibration of cloud and cliff, a millimeter of electric breath between. Georgia O'Keeffe doesn't paint body parts. She paints drizzle blotting sky, mist masking cliffs. She paints the vortex of clouds circling deep recesses of the canyon, thick sheets of rain where waterfalls should be, swirling winds and lateral currents confining its spread, wet margins seriously coiffed, a French curve. She paints opaque sheets of thick gray molded like an isosceles triangle, elongated from top to bottom, sheathing the canyon from crest to its midriff talus. Georgia O'Keeffe doesn't paint body parts. She paints cloud split into two, slit from top to bottom, folded and massaged into its succulent wet core, the slit's wetness painted as a clear white line. The clouds swelling with condensed evaporate on each side, thickening, its outer edges folding back into dark gray, the entirety perforated with wetness. The waterfall released below from the natural erotic engagement of complementary pairs, falling and pooling, falling and pooling, appearing to accord with the moniker abstract. Waterfall number 3, Īao Valley, is to Georgia O'Keeffe the least restrictive, the least insecure, the least conditioned, and least expected. Hence, the most embracing, the most reflective, the most definitive form for the intangible things in herself that she can clarify only in paint. She paints the most real, the most Georgia O'Keeffe. She paints Rilke's earth. This is what you want, to arise in us invisible, your dream to enter us wholly, nothing left outside to see. She paints her coming to be rather than her having been. Thank you very much. If you're interested to follow up, again, contact me, Dennis Winters, at talesoftheearth.com. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.